Hi, my name is Steven, and today my group is going to be presenting fractals in biology. This is Fred, Josh, Connor, and Hanan. And Josh will be starting us off.
Alright, just so some topics we'll be going over the origins of fractals in biology, medicine. How fractals in cancer, identified. Fractals in the lungs, fractals in the heart, fractals in the brain. So if you're like me, I like to question when all things begin, or how things came up or whatnot. And so I decided to do origins of fractal biology, how it all started. And so fractal geometry was introduced during the golden age of cell biology, which is between the 1960s and the 1990s. And before I go any further, does anybody know what a cell is? I think a lot of people think they know what a cell is, but not actually the function of what a cell does.
It transports.
Anybody? Transports. Alright, well, I'll give you a little simplified answer. So cells are referred to as the building blocks of life to all living things. So that means it provides structures to the body. It takes in nutrients from food and converts it into energy so that it is able to carry out specialized functions within the body. And then onto that, does anybody know what a cell membrane is? Membrane.
Yes.
Okay, so if you guys do not know what a cell membrane is, it's kind of like the outer layer of the cell. It separates the cell from its environment, and in a way I kind of think of it as a gate because it allows for materials to come into the cell and out of the cell. And so moving on to when it was introduced. So the application of fractal geometry to cell biology stemmed from the discovery that cellular membrane systems has fractal properties. And so, during the golden age of cell biology, a group of Swiss scientists and French scientists had a disagreement on the dimensions of the cell membrane. And because of the different dimensions that were seen through different magnifications in a microscope. And so what was discovered was what they were mentioning before, which is the coastal paradox, is that the more you magnify into it, the more complex it gets. And so with that discovery, what does that mean today? What does that mean to our biology today and our better understanding of human biology? And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I'm going to be passing it on to Steven.
So right now I'll be talking about cancer. So earlier Josh was saying how a cell has a function within the body. And when this happens, when it finishes its function, it goes through apoptosis. So that means that the cell dies, or it either splits off to create more cells. But when it doesn't go through these two processes, it becomes abnormal. And it basically continues to grow more abnormal cells, which creates like the cancer cell itself. And there are 5 stages of of cancers. So stage 0 is when there is an abnormal cell within the body, but it can potentially lead up to cancer. Stage 1 is when it's in a small area and it's in a small area of the body. Stage 2 and 3 are when it's starting to grow, when the cancer is starting to grow and it's like starting to spread towards the tissues and lymph nodes. And stage 4 is when it starts to spread throughout the entire parts of the body. And next slide. And there are methods of detecting cancer overall, like biopsy. So a biopsy is when the doctor takes a sample of your tissue or your blood, and then they take that to test to see if the cancer cell is cancerous or not. And you can also take imaging tests as well. And this is only a way to detect where the cancer is, but it can't determine whether the cell is cancerous or not. And next slide. So the doctors can use something called an atomic force microscope. So if they were to look into a cancer cell, so this would be like the base, and if they were to zoom in more from here, then it'll look the same. So, and as they go on further, then it'll look more like a fractal, and the more like layers of a fractal there are, the deeper the stage of cancer that it will be. And I'll be passing it on to Fred.
Alright, so I'll be talking about fractals in the lungs. So we got a skeleton here. The lungs are right here, protected by your ribcage. So as Riley was talking about earlier, trees in nature have a branching fractal pattern and are similar to how like blood vessels work in the human body. So lungs are about the same. So lungs have a branching pattern, branching fractal pattern, and much like trees, they kind of serve the same purpose. Trees, I mean, they're like the lungs of the earth. They take in CO2 and release oxygen, and lungs do the opposite. So the way lungs actually grow is because of the fractal pattern during their growth, it compresses the surface area of your bronchi and whatnot in your lungs. So they can actually grow that way, because if it didn't do that, then they'd just be too big. So for the development of the lungs, during the pseudoglandular phase of lung development, so it starts in the trachea when you're just like an embryo, when you're not even like born yet, and the lungs develop into bronchi and bronchioles, and they exponentially increase throughout the development process, up to the 23rd power when it gets to the alveolar sacs, which are the primary functional part of the lungs, because they take the oxygen that you breathe in and put it into the bloodstream, and then carbon dioxide comes back in, goes through the lungs, and is breathed out. So this relates to how like blood vessels work as well in your body, and Hanan will be talking more about that.
Fractals in the human heart. Fractals are very useful in modeling in the heart and circulatory structure, and they play an important role in maintaining homeostasis. The main area where fractals can be seen in the circulatory system are artery and vein, organization of heart muscle groups, branching or of certain muscles inside the heart. The fractal structure of the veins, article, and heart muscle have protected the circulatory system from the strong buoyancy pumping of the human heart. The fractal structure, which is usually unnecessary, come into play when the heat network is damaging. The Purkinje network is a specialized conduction system within the heart that ensure the proper activation of the ventricles to product effective contribution. That this help the heart to be balanced and resistant to damage. The factory geometry of the heart could possibly save us every day.
Alright, so next I'll be talking about fractals in the brain. So when you look at the brain, right, it looks like this. So it looks like all little like tubes and like your intestines, but really this is what a brain looks like. All these little lines, it's just wrinkles. So I got a good analogy here. So like, let's say I want a piece of paper, right? I want to put it in my pocket. Well, I can't really just stick it right in there. So what the brain sort of does, it sort of does like this sort of fold. Like you fold it once, fold it a little bit more, and then eventually you'll be able to stick it. Like our skull doesn't have enough room to like have a bigger brain. So what the brain does is it makes folds to a bigger brain. And this is a mouse brain. Also, it's very smooth, and mouses aren't very smart, so that's why their brains look like this. And this is sort of how how a brain folds itself. And obviously, it follows a very fractal design, as you can see. It's like it's not disorganized or in chaos. It's done very deliberately. Yep. And so moving forward, not only do folds allow you to have a bigger brain, but it also allows your brain to hold more neurons, which is how we are conscious and how we can feel pain and be happy. So the bigger your brain is, the more neurons you have. So you'll see here, this is the scan of a 1-month-old baby, and this is the brain of a 4-year-old child. And as you can see, there's a major difference in the development of the neurons in the brain. And as Riley and Fred have talked about before, neurons sort of grow the same way that trees, like they have the same they have a similar fractal structure, as you can see, So I like to think of it as like I think it looks sort of like the roots of like a weed or like a plant, it's very complex, very disorganized, but what I want to end on is that, the human brain, the human body, as disorganized and chaotic it may seem, there's a certain order to things, it's very complex. We don't fully understand it yet, but this fractals play a very important role in how the human body functions. So, yeah, that's all I got. Thank you.